So no shaking the room too loudly, because if this falls, I'm in trouble. Yeah, so my name is Mark Phillips. I work for a company called Basho Technologies, and I'm here to talk about building healthy distributed systems. I'm particularly passionate about a bunch of distributed systems. Not all of them are made up of computers. And I'm actually pretty thrilled to get the chance to talk to everybody here about them today. So a bit about me. Again, Mark Phillips is my name. You can find me on Twitter as FarkMillips. I blog every now and then at themarkphillips.com, and then mark@basho.com is my email address. Feel free to email me. Can you hear me in the back? Yeah, cool, okay. So what I wanted to do is talk about 3 distinct distributed systems, one made up of computers, one made up of, or actually 2 made up of people. And the 2 made up of people do, I guess, distinctly different things. But I wanted to set things up here with a definition of distributed systems that I hope we can all kind of agree on. And this is from Wikipedia. I'll read it for effect. A distributed system consists of multiple autonomous computers that communicate through a computer network. The computers interact with each other in order to achieve a common goal. Can we all agree that this is kind of what a distributed system is? Yeah? Okay, cool. Because if you don't, I'm screwed. So a few properties of distributed systems. Obviously, they're distributed. So there's no central coordinator. They are very easy to set up. They're scalable. So you want things that are horizontally scalable. You want to add commodity hardware to get more throughput processing storage, disk I/O, memory, all that good stuff. And then they're fault tolerant. So they're always available. There's no single point of failure, and they're self-healing. We build systems at Basho that do this, but we at Basho are also this. And we build communities at Basho that actually do this as well. So I want to start with Basho, the company. And this is our lovely logo, who John Newman has built wonderfully on and taken down the road. He's our lead designer. He's back there. So a bit about Basho. Raise your hands if you've heard of us. Cool. So we were founded in 2007. At that point, we were a sales application company. So we actually made a software as a service, SaaS is the fancy acronym, that helped salespeople prospect. It was a wonderful product. It worked really well. But towards the end of 2008, the economy got pretty bad, as most of you I'm sure know, and we couldn't raise any funding. We had a few customers, but nobody wanted to give us money for it. So we collapsed in 2008. So then we pivoted. I hate the word pivoted. It's pretty annoying. But in 2009, we spun things back up, raised some angel funding, and we were about 10 people at that point, primarily engineers. And one of our VCs, our prospective VC, came in and said, listen, you guys have a wonderful product. It works really well. I'm sure people will use it for sales. But what's really powerful here is the database underneath it. And our CTO, Justin Sheehy, had read the Dynamo paper and gotten all excited. And if you haven't read that, I highly recommend you read it. And so what we did was we decided to start selling Riak right around the middle of 2009. So we open sourced it in August. We started selling it before that. And the first large customer we closed was Comcast. Actually, Bob Iblita, who had to just leave, he was our first customer at Mochi Media. And those were fun times with your first database customer. So now Basho is the company that sponsors Riak, the open source NoSQL database. I'm going to talk about that in a bit. And we sell closed source extensions to Riak in the form of licenses. So when you buy Riak, you're getting obviously the open source plus the end lines of code that comprise the EDS version and some fantastic support by some of the guys in the back here, actually. So year-on-year growth, we grew pretty fast. At the end of 2009, we were selling Riak. We had 14 people, primarily engineering, a few sales and marketing, and a few executives. So things picked up, went pretty well. 2010, we were 25 people. We had some funding in our pocket. I think we raised 1 or 2 rounds at that point. We were selling stuff. We might have had 15 or 20 customers. We had a kind of cohesive product roadmap coming together. Things were looking pretty good. And then 2011 was a huge year for us. Riak hit 1.0. We grew the company in a ton of ways. And we were sitting at 60 people at the end of 2011. So pretty huge amount of growth there. And we have 3 offices. We have one in San Francisco. You guys like that little bounce there on the arrow? We have one in Reston, Virginia, and then we have one in Cambridge, Mass, with the last one here being our initial office. But the cool thing is that we are spread everywhere. And I apologize for members of Basho who see this talk. There's a few other people located in the middle here who didn't have time to put on the map. But the key is, at this point, we're about 70 people, and we're distributed over 2 or 3 continents. We have people who are, Basho never shuts down. We're always online in some way, shape, or form. We're about to open an office in London, and we will have some type of stake in the ground in the form of property in Japan at some point because we have customers and we have users over there. And so if we take a look at this distributed systems definition, we can kind of adapt this to a distributed company. So a distributed company consists of multiple autonomous team members. They communicate and collaborate through various channels. The team members interact with each other to achieve a common goal. So keeping with this, we need a common goal that brings Basho together. A bit about hiring. When you hire where the talent is, which is what we've done, we hire brilliant engineers, guys like Dave Smith, and Andrew Thompson and Joseph Bloomstead, and awesome sales executives and fantastic marketing people. But they don't necessarily always live in the same town, and they don't want to move their entire families or their whole support network across the country just to take a job with the company that they think they will like. So we decided early on, and a lot of you are in the same boat as Basho, as you are either Erlang developers or your company is composed primarily of people who are writing Erlang, and we all know that at this point, there's maybe 50 Java devs for every one person who could write Erlang professionally. So you're kind of forced to hire where the talent is, and so we made the decision to do that. But that puts huge strains on culture, because when you're not in the same office with people, sitting next to the person who just broke the build, it's a lot harder to communicate with them. When you can't just go down the hall and talk to your HR representative about something that's that really matters to you and how you feel about the company, you have to work hard to keep that stuff intact. And so these are our common goals at Basho. We want to make Basho into a massive powerhouse. People who work for us want to turn the company into, I'm scared to say Oracle. We don't want to be Oracle. We want to be as big as Oracle, but we definitely don't want to be Oracle. Professional development. We want people who work with us to come and learn things every day. We entirely expect that everyone who works for the company will, at some point in the future, hopefully not too soon, leave to start their own thing or leave to be part of something that was only possible because of what they learned at Basho. We also want people to be happy. I couldn't show up to work every day and hate my job. I don't want to do that. We don't want people to come to the office and fire up their computer and look at their terminal and just throw coffee at the wall because they hate what they're doing. And then we want to deliver an exceptional product. It's entirely possible to distribute something that sucks and people will buy it. This can happen with databases. It can happen with consumer technology. We don't want to do that. We want to make something that works well, that people are excited to run in production. And so these are the common goals for Basho. So how do we do this? We have a lot of stuff that we use for internal communication and collaboration. So real-time chat, this is absolutely huge. We use something called Jabber, and then the support team uses Campfire for internal support stuff and also for dealing with customer issues. Everybody hangs out in Jabber all day long. It's kind of just this running ephemeral stream of messages. Maybe you pay attention, maybe you don't, but you kind of feel like you're part of the conversation happening internally. And we log the whole thing, and you can go back and check out the logs. Actually, one of our guys, Brian Fink, ran a pretty interesting analysis the other day of who was, how do I put this delicately, using the most 4-letter words in chat. Turned out it was a guy named Ryan Zazeski, who's not here but would appreciate that. So Skype. We Skype constantly. Even if you have nothing to do, if you're waiting for something to compile, or if you're really frustrated with a benchmarking run, or if you can't figure out why you can't access something, jump on Skype, talk to somebody face to face, do a video chat with the head of sales or the head of marketing if they're not out closing a deal or something like that. It's huge. It kind of brings the office closer together even though you're thousands of miles apart. Yammer. Anybody use Yammer? I know most of you guys back there do. Anybody? OJ? Awesome. It's essential. We added it about 6 months back. I was kind of skeptical on where it would fit It's an enterprise social network, they call it, and it's every bit as valuable as you can imagine it would be. I highly recommend you check that out. GitHub. Bash is an open source company, and even for the closed source stuff, we use GitHub, and it's helped us collaborate as a company, and it's something that I believe we couldn't do without at this point. Agile Zen, although this might not be true as of right now, although we have some stuff in Agile Zen. We use Kanban system for prioritizing work on React internally, and that's been super valuable. Email is annoying, but we use it. And then documentation. We document as much things as we can, as we possibly can. Everything from internal jokes, and I think I touch on this a bit later, to processes for rebuilding machines, et cetera, et cetera. All these things contribute to us being able to communicate as a company that doesn't work anywhere near each other. And so I want to highlight something really quickly. Yammer, I just mentioned a second ago, is something super valuable to us. So this is our, if you guys can see this, this is Tony Falco, who's our COO. He posed a challenge on Yammer the other day. This was last week. He actually said, people should post pictures of themselves as a child. It'd be funny to see. And so we had, I think, 30 people respond to this. And I'll give you a few examples here. So this is Reed Draper. He's a senior engineer on our team, and I think he's maybe 25 or 26 years old. And this is Reed Draper in high school, which is what he posted. This is Andy Gross, who's our chief architect. And you might not be able to see this, but over here on the right, we have like a 13-year-old Andy Gross at a punk concert. And so this was posted internally. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it goes a super, super long way. Maybe if there's a product launch you're struggling to get out the door, and everybody is at odds, and you can't really walk down the hall and talk to them, you'll think back on when, where is it? When Reed Draper shared the picture of himself with a fro, and it'll make things a lot easier to deal with. So don't be scared to be corny. Good meetings. Meetings can be really destructive. We try to limit them. We've had a lot of different meetings come in and out of our schedule, and I think we've gotten in a pretty good spot. We do quarterly in-person summits. We can still do this now. The company is about 75 people at this point. And the next one, I think, is going to be May 1st in Cambridge. These are immensely valuable. Anytime you can, you need to be working with your coworkers next to them, just kind of interacting with every team, sales talking and marketing, engineering talking to HR. It's super valuable. We do bi-monthly non-mandatory company all hands. That's just a big way of saying we open up a phone line twice a month. And our CEO, Don Rippert, comes on, kind of leads the call, but it's pretty much a big free-for-all. And those are super, super helpful. And then we have stand-ups and Scrum. I think they happen, they vary from team to team. Support does them, engineers do them. There's a few teams under engineering that use them. And they're short. They're like 15 minutes, 10 minutes once a week. You fire off a few things that you're working on, and you move on. A bit about documentation. It's extremely important to document things, especially when you're talking about code. But in general, documentation is paramount to a team success, I would say. Inside jokes, I mentioned that before. Internal talks. We do an internal talk once a week at Basho. Everybody, you can offer up a talk. We have people come in. Actually, I think we're going to have a Cassandra talk in about a week, which should be cool. We record them. We put them on the internal wiki. You can watch them whenever you want. Design documents. I can show you, 5,000 words on the ways that we thought about implementing secondary indexes, all the way back to when we started. And these are incredibly important for people learning both about the company currently, but where we also came from. Product ideas, the stuff we just released 2 days ago, React CS, came from Andy Gross, our chief engineer, kind of fooling around with React and S3. Product feedback, super important. New hire processes. The quicker you can get a new hire up to speed on what you're doing, obviously the faster they're going to contribute to your team. That only gets harder when you're not working right next to them. So documenting everything around a process for new hires is crazy. Very useful. And then everything else. So put up a GitHub repo, make it private, use their wiki stuff, and then just let everybody go to town on it. Open source your code and use GitHub. I don't think this crowd has too much to disagree with on that, but it absolutely contributes directly to developer happiness. Basho at this point, and hopefully for the foreseeable future, is still a product and engineering focused company. And I am a firm believer that open sourcing code and being able to talk about the code you're writing outside of the job that you're doing is immensely valuable. It makes your company's product better. obviously with Riak, that's very true because we sell what our open source code is. So when somebody like OJ breaks it and fixes it for us, that is just fantastic. It's great marketing. People see your code out there, and they maybe they're upset that their company doesn't let them open source anything, and they want to kind of be part of what you guys are doing. And then user permissive license. I'm a huge fan of the Apache license, MIT license, BSD. We don't have to go into a flame war on that. And then open source almost everything. This is a blog post by Tom Preston-Warner of GitHub. I highly recommend it. And then what your company should have, why your company should have a permissive open source policy. That's by a guy named Nathan Mars who works for Twitter. Both super valuable. I recommend you check them out. And then this is an example of a company who's not necessarily productizing their open source stuff, but how they do well with building a community. This is a project called Sensei DB, which came out of LinkedIn. And the LinkedIn guys, aside from writing really good software, they have things like Voldemort and Kafka and Sensei DB and a few other very cool projects. They're very good about open sourcing it and building communities around their stuff immediately after it's out. And this is a comment here from Hacker News on the project. I'll read it here. I can't speak for Sensei DB itself, but I think that LinkedIn deserves a lot of credit for the technology. They've been open sourcing in the last few months. Fantastic to see. So I don't know if you're familiar with the dynamics of Hacker News. For better or for worse, you get a lot of eyes on things that get to the top of the page. 150 points here. Top comment, I don't know, 6,000 or 7,000 people, 8,000 people probably saw this. And so now they see LinkedIn as kind of a steward of good code and good open source. And this does ridiculous things for the branding of the company. And as far as I know, the culture over at LinkedIn Engineering is fantastic. And so hiring is tough regardless, especially now when engineers are at such a premium. If you hire in a vacuum, if you hire people without letting them be and experience what it might be like to work at your company, your culture will undoubtedly suffer. You need to have sales talking to engineering. You need to have the marketing department interview people. You need to have as many people as possible from a team, to a certain extent, take part in the hiring process. If anybody can pull Dave Smith aside, ask him about his rigorous interview. It is absurd, and I pity the fool who has to go through that thing.
So is that just to see if they can, there's generally three things when you hire. One is, can the person do the job?
Mm-hmm.
Will they like the job? Will they fit in? That's the third part, will they fit in?
Yeah, so you weave that, I think, through all the steps of the interview. And you get really good at kind of, technically they might be qualified, but culturally you kind of get a sense of where they might be. Another thing, have a list of people you want to hire at all times. Like, keep a list, text file on your desktop, and just have it open, and just fire names in there from time to time. You never know who you'll come across, and don't be scared to keep people in the loop about what your company's working on. There's ways to essentially interview them for a very long time before they actually know that you're trying to hire them. And if they want to work on stuff before you even give them a job, it's a pretty powerful thing. And then just a bit of a statement here. Poor culture rots a company from within and lessens its resiliency. A successful company will go through a lot of ups and downs. And the only way you will make it through the downs, and the ups, I guess, for that matter, is to have a strong culture that can deal with it. And I'll talk a bit more about this in a second. And then company fault tolerance. So we talked about a system being fault tolerant and being resilient to failures. This happens with companies too. So Basho, we had a new CEO, Don Rippert. This is 2011, and we had massive growth. Our revenue, I think, went up by 400%. We went from 25 to 60 people, but that presents new challenges. And our system is constantly improving. I'd love to tell you that there's no one who's ever left Basho, and that it's so perfect culturally and from a work side of things that people would be scared to leave. But we aren't perfect. I think 2 or 3 people have left Basho at this point, and that hurts a lot. Especially when you pride yourself on being culturally strong. So you always have to be revising your process for both bringing people on and keeping them involved in the culture. And so at the end of 2012, we're going to be a lot bigger than 100 people if we go to plan. I can't actually say what this number is exactly, I don't think, but it's like more than 120 and less than 180. The point here is that all these things that we do internally to keep the culture strong and to keep good, very valuable people coming in the door will let us build to this number. And then hopefully I can give this talk again next year and show you a number in 2013 that maybe has another 0 on the end. And we'll only be able to get there if we do this correctly. So that is a quick look at Basho as a distributed system. So the other one is the React community. So we have a few people here from the React community. OJ, who's in the fourth row here.
People don't all work at Basho.
No. So I spend most of my time with the React community. I think my official fancy title now is Director of Community and Developer Evangelism. But what that means is I spend my time basically trying to build momentum and visibility around React and the rest of our open source products. I apologize, I forgot this guy's name, but he is one of our users based in, I believe, the Ukraine. This is OJ and his 2 sons, and he is in Australia. And then this is Ryan Zazeski at a party that we had last year in San Francisco. So, distributed community made up of people. And so if we go back to this definition, what is a distributed community? It consists of multiple autonomous members, communicate and collaborate through various channels, and they interact with each other in order to achieve a common goal. So a quick divergence into why we build a community. For Basho, it's kind of obvious. We're an open source company. Companies like Red Hat have proven that you can take a community and be good to them and give them good software and build it into something massive. I think they just crossed $1 billion in revenue for an open source company. That's kind of crazy. So why build it? And this is going to be pretty Basho specific, but you'll see how this kind of transfers over into other companies. So grassroots marketing, branding, and awareness. A few chunks of things from Twitter here, thanking us for, this is a guy from a company called Drop, what is the company name? I forgot the name, but came into the office for about 45 minutes, sat down with myself and one of our engineers, and talked through a problem they were having in production. They didn't pay us any money for this. We enjoyed talking to them. We got a little love on Twitter. Another one here, React migration finally completed. Soon MongoDB will be a thing of the past. Keep loves Basho. So I don't know, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people saw that. That's super valuable. And this is better marketing than our marketing department could ever spend money on, especially when you're developing open source software and marketing to developers, which Basho is. Code contributions and bug fixes, excuse me. We have almost 180 names in our thanks file as of a few days ago, and I think that's even a bit out of date. And I did a calculation which is really far off from the actual number, but it's a decent approximation. Between October 2010 and September 2011, we actually had about 1,600 hours of time contributed from outside of Basho, and that's either through bug fixes, features, bugs being reported, or things like documentation, be it for code or for the wiki on various things. So this is super valuable. And the more time that the developers using our stuff spend on this, the more time our guys get to spend writing new core stuff and working with our customers. Support. This is huge. This is a screenshot of a Stack Overflow thing. Oop. I don't really like Stack Overflow or the other things that are kind of like Stack Overflow, like Quora and the other Q&A sites, only because everybody thinks that you have to get answered regardless, and they get pissed when you don't get an answer within like 45 minutes. Even if I went and told this guy to go to the React mailing list, he'd get upset. Whatever. Anyways, a guy by the name of Serjan Pejic, and I apologize, I did not pronounce that correctly, but he doesn't work for us. But he spends a lot of time on Stack Overflow answering things that are tagged with React. And again, this happens in other channels too. IRC, Twitter, in person at bars in San Francisco when production clusters crash. And we're not there. But this helps us to spend more time on what we're working on, and also shows the community that we have people out there to support them, and they can use our software without paying for it, which is a huge.
You mean he's not a Basho employee, it's not working against Basho?
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And so then revenue. Community absolutely contributes to our revenue. 75% of our new customers in 2011 came from the open source community. So these are people who had used us in production and came to us and said, I want to pay for the other features, or the support is something that's very important to us. So it's obviously in our best interest to keep the community happy. But we build a community for the members as well. It's not just self-serving to Basho. So a few of the reasons why people would come and be part of what we're building, they just want working quality code. Someone has to build a startup. They need a database that can scale. React works, and so there you go. They want recognition and praise. This is a big one. People will write code for projects or write documentation for wikis so that they can get their name out there and they can build, I guess you call it social capital. Very important. Desire to contribute. Sometimes people just want to give back. Jobs, whether they like it or not, we try to hire people from the community whenever possible, without fishing the pond too much, that is. Joseph Blomstead, who is here but not in this talk, we hired him about maybe about a year ago at this point, maybe 10 months. He wrote a brilliant piece of code that sat right on top of React. And I was sitting in the office with our chief architect, and the second he released it, we looked it over, and then I said, pick up the phone and call that guy and make him a job offer. And that's what happens. And I've talked to various other people who've said, I learned React just to acquire skills. And we definitely want people to learn enough to be able to get a job writing React somewhere else. And that ties right into skills acquisition. People want to learn something new. They want to be on the cutting edge and stay up. So these are all the reasons why we want people to come and be part of our community. So a big long list of how you kind of communicate and collaborate in a distributed community. IRC, mailing list, Twitter, recap, which I'll touch on. Things like meetups, Q&A sites, I mentioned Stack Overflow, blogs, books, conferences, actual meetings, GitHub, and drinking, which is very important. So I mentioned the recap. I want to highlight this. This is something that I write. Typically it's 3 times a week, but travel schedules do make that kind of hard. And it's just a really simple plain text. Well, this is an embedded link because it came from the blog post that also does the recap. It's bullet points on what's happening in the community. Everything from issues that were opened and closed. We try to be very transparent about what's broken with the software, to news about somebody speaking, to, let's see here, office hours happening at Basho, and a Q&A. This is actually pulled from IRC. Somebody's question went unanswered, and so I grabbed it and I answered it. So this has been immensely valuable. Books, something called the React Handbook, and I actually have discount codes to this if anybody wants it. We didn't write this. This came from a guy named Matthias Mayer, who actually at one point worked for Basho, but has since left, started something else, and is still using us extensively and contributing to a few of our libraries. This has been fantastic for our adoption. I think this came out about 4 or 5 months ago, and he sold thousands of copies of this, and it's been wonderful for us. And then meetups and drinking. This is the React 1.0 party. You have to meet people face to face. It's crazy how valuable this is. Spend money, buy drinks, give things away. It's crucial. And then GitHub, I mentioned this before. This is just a picture here of Ryan Zazeski working with a guy from a company called Clipboard to get some code merged into our search product. And then give things away. So Basho is, if you guys saw that absurd conference booth we have downstairs, we like to spend money on things that look good. We like to give a lot of T-shirts away, a lot of stickers. This is a guy who emailed our mailing list saying thanks for sending along a T-shirt. And it's really simple. It takes $2 or $3 worth of shipping plus $10 worth of the T-shirt, a couple of stickers, but it goes a long way. And we have 1,000+ people on our mailing list. And this guy sending along to 1,000 people who are using React or who might be on the fence about it is going to go a very long way to kind of reinforce how special the React community is. And then build communities regardless. This is kind of an interesting point, which I think is very important. A lot of people don't really think there's any point in building a community around things that aren't necessarily your core product. So this is a guy named, I forgot his actual, it's Charlie Robbins, I believe. And he works for a company that does Node.js hosting. And this is one of the libraries. He just took a second to say, not really an issue, but wanted to say stuff like this makes writing open source software worthwhile. Extremely valuable both for the brand here of Charlie's company and also the people contributing to his code. So build communities regardless. But things go wrong, right? So the reason why you put in all this effort to make sure this distributed community functions well is that when things go wrong, you can recover and things can keep moving on and things progress nicely. So this was an issue we had with Riak. A very vocal and very valuable member of our community named Kyle Kingsbury, who goes by Afer, emailed in to say, somebody reported it on the list and was asking what the resolution was, and I think we waited a few hours to get back to him. And so Kyle jumped in. He said, I was waiting for Bachelor to write an official notice about this, but it's been there 3 days, and I really don't want anybody else to go through this shit show. And we had a problem. I don't totally remember the nature of the issue. But we had to do some recovering from that. We issued a patch, we sent it out, we apologized, and we learned from this. And I think what we ended up doing is creating a critical issues mailing list that would, people who don't want the mailing list traffic but wanted to make sure that they knew about all the critical issues can subscribe to that. So we're always learning, always getting better. So that's a look at the second type of community here, a distributed community building chunk of software. And the last one I want to look at is made up of actual computers. So enough of this boring people stuff. Let's talk about distributed systems that are actually made out of metal. So Riak is obviously our database, and then Voxer is a company who uses Riak, who I'm going to talk about. And then lastly, there's our distributed systems quote, multiple autonomous computers that communicate through a network, blah, 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 blah. And so a bit about Riak. It's a lot of things. A database, it's key value storage, distributed, it's fault tolerant, scalable, Dynamo-inspired, startups, Fortune 100 companies use it. It's written primarily in Erlang, which is why we love coming to these things so much. It's pronounced Riak, although the joke is if you use it in production, you can call it whatever you want. And it's not the right fit for every project or application. So that's a bit about Riak. Happy to talk more in depth about it. And then it's been deployed thousands of times at this point. And we're seeing 10, 15, 20 new deployments a week. Here's a few of our users. We have people like AOL, Bump, Comcast, Voxer. I'm going to talk about Mozilla, Swipely, .cloud, Yammer, Vibrant, and Mig. So huge swath of companies who are using this. Has anybody ever used Voxer? A few? Yeah. So this is the Voxer app. It's actually pretty nifty. So you can basically leave voicemails or talk in real time with people. It's like the Nextel push-to-talk, which some of you might remember. It's a very simple concept, very simple technology, but it's extremely useful. And you can send photos, you can send text, but the main thing is the voice. We work with Voxer, I'm trying to think, started June of last year. So they were on CouchDB. They came to us and said, it works well now, but we think we might have trouble making the system a bit bigger. Can you help us? And so we worked with them to move their system over to Riak, and these were their common goals. So remember, we had the company goals, we had the community goals for Riak community, and this is the system goal for Voxer. Serve and receive app traffic, perform queries when needed, don't go down, scale out to meet demand, and low consistent response times. I'm sure there's more, but these are the ones that are pretty much standard across any application. And so this was the initial Riak cluster that Voxer had, about 11 nodes, decent size amount of data. I think it was around a half a terabyte, 200 peak concurrent, 20,000 peak concurrent users, and then they were doing about 4 million daily total requests. Again, this is not a blog running on one node of MySQL, but it's not Facebook. But then something interesting happened. They kind of got huge. This happened around November of last year. This is the top one here is a headline from TechCrunch. This year, anybody know who Soulja Boy is? Like 2 people. Yeah. So Soulja Boy is he has about 3 million Twitter followers. Or he did when I took this picture. He's probably got closer to 4 at this point. He's a US-based rapper. He's not necessarily very good, but he has a lot of followers. And so he tweeted about Voxer, 3 million people saw it, and things just kind of went to town. And then there's actually a few amusing YouTube videos posted of people rapping about Voxer after that. And then this is a CNN piece with the CEO of the company talking to, I think, one of the reporters about what Voxer is, how it came to be, et cetera, et cetera. And then somebody told me that they just ran a piece last week in like Good Morning America, I think, was doing it. And so this is, last night I took this photo on my iPhone. This was Voxer's position on the social networking free apps. in the App Store. They've been as high as number 1, and actually last week they were number 8 all time for apps. So they went from this thing here, they jumped through this crazy scale scenario, shot up the social networking charts, and now this is what the cluster looks like. And this is probably outdated because they move so fast. Bigger than 40 node cluster that's storing user data. They have a 40 node cluster just to serve the app traffic. They have about a terabyte a day of user data coming into the system. And I think they're somewhere up around, I don't know, I'm making this up, but 100 terabytes is what they're working with at this point. Hundreds of thousands of concurrent users at peak. This number is a lot bigger than 100,000. I can't actually share the exact number because their CTO told me I couldn't, but it's really huge. And we went from about 11 to 80 nodes in a month, which is crazy. Like, I wouldn't wish that on anybody, only because it's a ridiculous amount to do. And then at one point, they were adding 3 nodes a day. So they're taking 3 physical machines and adding that to the cluster that they had every day, which is really hard to do. And so it didn't all work. Lots of things went wrong. They lost a lot of nodes in production. There's a few guys in the back here who will tell you exactly how bad that was. There was something that happened with TCP incast, and this number 2 here is a reference to it. It was something that we hadn't seen before. The level of traffic that they had triggered this thing. LevelDB is a local storage backend in Riak. We test these things extensively, but when you're going from 11 to 80 nodes, a lot of times we can't test that. And then lots of other shit went wrong. But the bottom line is it's still running. They've had problems. The system has remained online for the most part, and without planning for that growth, and I'll shamelessly plug Riak here because I work there. But without using Riak, they wouldn't have been able to make that happen. And so here, just a general quote about scalability. Scalability is the ability of a system, network, or process to handle a growing amount of work in a capable manner, or its ability to be enlarged to accommodate that growth. And so, whether it's a community of people being just building a piece of software, or being part of a company, or a system that holds up an application like Voxer, scalability is incredibly important. And so, present system health dictates future ability to scale. Right now, things probably look pretty good. When Voxer had 11 nodes, when Basho had 25 people, or when the React community was only composed of the 50 or the 100 or the 500 kind of cutting edge people, everything was going well. The infrastructure was in place, things were happening, code was making to the code base, pull requests were getting merged, people weren't yelling at each other on the mailing list. But without the kind of framework that I've kind of talked about, I don't think it would have been possible. And we still have huge hurdles to cross. So what we're doing now will hopefully let us do that next phase of growth and scale up. And so everything is susceptible to downtime. If your company or your community or your distributed system, things can break in half, and your company isn't pushing a product out the door when it was supposed to. You didn't ship on time. Or the initiative that you put in place to make sure that the new wiki was launched in a month takes 6, or Voxer's app goes down. Downtime is the worst possible thing for a system. And capacity plan or perish, this ties into that whole thing. You have to have the resources in place to bring on 60 employees in a year, or to go from 11 to 80 nodes, or at least choose a database that'll let you go from 11 to 80 nodes, or a platform that'll let you do that. And then the final point I want to make here is that everything is distributed now. So whether your company is located in 7 different places, or your community is working from every part of the world, or your application is using 5,000 computers, there's no way getting around the distributed nature of these things. So you have to plan for this. There's really no way to get around it. And what I wanted to say is that it's an amazing time to build a distributed system. So wherever you're working, or whatever app you're building, don't be scared to kind of lean into the whole distributed nature of how things could go. Because if you plan correctly, it really makes for an amazing experience. And This is a ridiculous photo of me made by somebody on the internet, and that's all I got for you. Thank you. Questions?
So, as you grow, how do you plan to deal with the scale? Any ideas on how you might change things as you scale up, or you don't think you need to?
So the question is, how are we going to scale as we grow? The short answer is I don't really know. We're going to learn from what we did before. We'll add more documentation. We'll tweak some processes. We'll change the hiring process. But it's an iterative thing, right? So as you go to 60 to 120, you lean on the processes that have worked, and then you try new stuff for maybe the specific version of the Kanban that you're using doesn't actually help people who are working in 17 time zones away. So
what are the biggest issues you faced with such a distributed team?
what are the biggest issues we face with a distributed team? I personally think it's hard to celebrate together. We launched a product on Tuesday, and like the biggest concern I had was that we weren't all in the same office to have a drink together or something like that. That's hard. Yammer has helped us a lot with that. A lot of times, I guess, difficult discussions, and by difficult I mean things where people are angry. Those are hard to have in a distributed fashion. So, we almost renamed, don't tell anybody this, we almost renamed React like 7 or 8 months ago. It was going to look a lot like React, but it would have had a few other characters on it. And that was like an incredibly heated discussion that would have been so much better to have in a conference room, but it was happening over Yammer in kind of real time, but it was over Yammer, and everybody was kind of spread out. And the fact that Basho, I think at that time we were about 60, could still have a conversation, like the whole company, about renaming the database, I think is pretty powerful. But yeah, I would say those are the first two that come to mind.
How do you find the balance between dealing with community and dealing with those who make sure that you've got food on your plate at the end of the month?
Yes. So how do you balance the open source stuff versus selling software, is what you're saying? Yeah, that is a tough thing to balance. I struggle with this because I come to a conference like Erlang Factory where I would never have known OJ had I not worked at Basho, or a guy named Mac Laya, who I would never have known. And so open source has opened some fantastic doors. I don't know. I guess you build something that you believe in, and you build a sales culture that isn't high pressure. And we're struggling with this too. You make sure the sales team and the people selling the software understand that your community is very valuable, both to Basho, but also the people working in your community derive extreme value out of the fact that your software is free and open source. And you have to do a lot of upfront education on things like that. But it's a struggle. I mean, it's something that is on my mind every day. So.
So to follow on to that, do you find that mind over matter principle applies there? In that, like, those with mind don't matter and those that matter don't mind?
Yeah, it's always a small number of people who seem to be vocal about it. So React CS is our S3 thing that we just introduced, and I toyed with the messaging on how I was going to introduce it to the mailing list. There's an interesting component about it that there's a part of it that we have as functionality in the open source community right now, and we rewrote this functionality for the paid product, but we left the component in the open source community. And I was expecting a lot more backlash than I got, actually. I got, I think, 2 or 3 emails that were less than savory. But for the most part, it actually went very well, and I think that's kind of a testament to the type of stuff that we've put together. But you still obviously have to pay attention to the vocal people, because they are in a lot of ways the most valuable.
Are there any companies or other growth models that you've looked at when planning how you want Basho to get bigger or change in the next couple of years?
So I wouldn't say there's anything specific that we looked at. We have a lot of people, like our VP of Client Services, John Hornbeck, is very passionate about reading up on new processes and new technologies that people are using. Dave Smith, I don't think Dave Smith sleeps. He's our VP of Engineering. He just reads reams upon reams of things and kind of funnels that back into the process. I don't think there's anything specific that we've looked to. I mean, distributed companies are still something very new. And open source software is still something that no one's really proved can succeed. There's a few anomalies like Red Hat. But I think the combination of those two make our situation pretty unique. So, I mean, hopefully, maybe one day, Bash will write a book on how we did it, and people will look to us. So, nobody wants to know why I'm wearing this ridiculous suit? No?
Why are you wearing a ridiculous suit?
Bash is having a party tonight called the Basho Bash, which you should all be signed up for. But I told the sales guys I was going to outdress them. So this is why I'm wearing the suit. Also, Francesco pointed out that it is the business track, so we need to look classy. Cool. Anything else? Awesome.
But you're trying to impress your mother-in-law, your future mother-in-law.
I'm sorry? Oh, yeah. Yes. Thank you. But, all right, cool. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.